This is CS952 Introduction to Web Technologies and Design, and we're talking about CSS selectors, tags, IDs, and classes. We started off with a tag. A tag is a fundamental HTML component like the H1 tag. How do you know what the fundamental HTML components are? What are the fundamental tags? Well, we have a little cheat sheet that gives you a list of the most commonly used HTML elements that we're going to be working with: divs, headings, paragraphs. Classes we have to create. Classes don't exist. Because we're using Bootstrap, we get all these classes added for us, but without Bootstrap we would have no classes. IDs also have to be created. Remember, the fundamental difference between IDs and classes is we can use classes as many times as we want. We can use an ID only once. So if we look here in our DOM panel, we can see we've got all these buttons, and all of these buttons are a member of the class Nav Special Buttons. So let's create a new selector that's an ID. So I'm going to click on my plus sign for Add Selector, and when I want to create an ID, the first thing I do is type the pound sign, because IDs always begin with the pound sign. Classes always begin with a period, and tags, you just write out the tag. So for our tag for the H1, we just typed H1. So I'm going to type in special S-P-E-C-I-A-L sales. That's going to be the name of my tag, and I'm using camel typing, starting the first word with lowercase letter, starting the second word with an uppercase letter, and do not use any spaces when you're creating these selectors. So I'm going to hit Enter. Now if I click on any of my buttons now, I can see in my Property Inspector this button has been assigned to a class of Nav Special Sales, and if I click on my ID, I can see Special Sales is now available. I didn't assign it yet. Let me click on Reviews, same. So my last button that says Specials, I'm going to assign it this ID of Special Sales. So let's click on that. Now I can see in my editing area that this button is a member of both the class Nav Special Buttons, because it begins with the period, and it has an ID of Special Sales. If I look in my DOM panel, again, I can see this button. It says ID equals Special Sales, and class is my Nav Special Buttons. Notice now if I click on any of my other buttons, if I click on my ID, it doesn't show me that anything's available. The reason that Special Sales is no longer available is because we can only use an ID once a page. So once we've used that ID, Dreamweaver does not make that ID available to be reused for anything else. IDs are always special. Let's give this ID, we haven't given this ID any properties. Let's give it a font. How about let's make it italic, okay? Font style, and under my font style I'm going to choose italic. So when I do that, I can see that my Specials button is now italic. None of the other buttons are italic, only my Specials. We can also see that we're able to combine classes and IDs together. Everything that's a member of the class Nav Special Buttons is red and has an underline. Anything that has an ID of Special Sales is italic. So I'm going to hit Save on this. We've talked about the difference between classes and IDs. We said that an ID we can only use once, classes we can use over and over again. We can see that we're able to combine classes and IDs together. Everything that's a member of the Nav Special Buttons class is red, and then we have a button that's a member of both the Special Buttons class, and this has an ID of Special Sales, and that button inherits both properties. The properties of being in the class and the ID. It's one of the features of cascading style sheets. Occasionally, you may have a conflict where you have one style rule that says do one thing and another style rule that says to do something else. For example, if we go to our Special Sales, we have our text color as red. What if I go down to my text color and I change it from red to green? Let's go to my text color, and I'm going to click on my color, and I'm going to go to RGB where it's red, green, blue. So let's type in 100% green, which would be 255, and I'm going to hit Enter. And when I do that, I can see that my specials button turned green. It seems like we have a conflict here. We have two different rules, right? We have one rule for our class that says make the text red, and then we have another rule for special sales that says make the text green. Why is it green and not red? The reason is an ID is considered to be more specific than a class. So one of the properties of CSS is the rules it has in cases of conflicts. Whenever you're getting more specific about what you're asking a web browser to do, that rule takes priority over a class. A whole bunch of things are members of a class, but only one thing is a member of an ID. So if there's a conflict, it goes with the one thing that's unique. And I'm going to go to my final web project. And let's close this page so we're not confused about what we're working on. We're looking at our history page, which uses an HTML table. Now, when we first create this table, we use the CSS bootstrap rules, which specify that the background color for the table should be transparent. But you can see we actually have this kind of soft purple color used instead. And that's because in our custom CSS styles file, we specify that the table should have a purple background. And our CSS file loads after the bootstrap one does. So in any case that we're going to have a conflict, whatever rule loads last, whatever rule is more specific in terms of CSS, that always takes priority. Now, one last question you might have is this. If classes and IDs are identical in every way you can think of, why would you ever use an ID instead of a class, right? You can use classes over and over again on a page. What on earth would be the value of using an ID? Well, IDs do have a special quality that classes do not have. We can use IDs as links on a web page. And let me explain why this is. Consider every link that you have ever clicked on since you started surfing the web. If you think about it, each click was a one-way flight from the page you were on to your destination. Each time you clicked on a link, you arrived at a specific destination. So clicking on a link does not take you to 3 places at a time. It takes you to just one specific place. So IDs are perfect for using as links. So let's take an example. We're on the bootstrap.com components page, and on this page there is a long list of all these different components that come included in Bootstrap that we can use to add to our page. And you can see there's a long list of items to go through here. Wouldn't it be convenient if we could skip right down to the very part of the page that we want? Well, we can do that. We're going to use an ID. I'm going to type the #. Now, as it turns out, our input groups section, which has information about input groups, and we're going to use input groups when we create our form, our input group section has an ID of input groups. So all I need to do is to type the #. Remember, when we type a #, that makes for an ID. IDs always begin with the #, okay? So I'm typing the #, and I'm typing input, IMPUT dash groups, GROUPS. That happens to be the ID of the input groups. Now if I hit enter on the keyboard, we go straight to the input groups section on our web page. So that's what makes IDs so awesome. By adding an ID after a web address, I am taken directly to the input group section. And you cannot do the same thing with classes. This is a property of IDs and IDs alone. So let's go to our student website. I'm going to hit F12, preview in Chrome. And I have the width of the page reduced as if we were viewing it on a mobile device. So this is our history page. If we wanted to go directly to the bottom of this page, all we need to do is add in an ID of footer. And remember, the ID of footer is going to be #FOOTER. So our navigation bar is a little bit crowded here. I'm going to expand this just so you can see everything a little bit better here. So this is pencilhistory.html, and then I type in # FOOTER. Now let's make the page, right now we can see the footer, so there's not going to be a lot of dramatic difference in going straight to the footer. But let's make our page very narrow, as if we were viewing this on a mobile phone or a smartphone, and I'm going to hit enter, and you'll see that when we use this URL and add # footer, ID footer, I'm going to hit enter, and you'll see we go straight to the bottom of the page. There's our footer. If we wanted to go to the beginning of our section, all I need to do is get rid of the word footer and type in section, SECTION, and it's going to take me up to the beginning of our section content. I'll hit enter, and there we go. We're right up at the beginning of our section content where it says history. So I hope these videos have given you a little insight into the difference between tags, classes, and IDs, and given you some ideas into the various ways we can use classes and IDs not only to style our documents, but we can also use IDs as navigation links.